talk about enmeshment. On the board here I have a quadrant, and there's two axes, okay? The first one is you and your partner. The second one is internal, external, or inside, outside. When we think about our needs, and these would be needs like you might find on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we can generally bucket our needs into needs that we believe are met outside of us or inside of us. Crisscrossing is what I want you to see. That is enmeshment. Enmeshment is when you mix up all sorts of things that are your intangible needs, and you're getting them from inside of someone else, and they're getting theirs from you. Doesn't that create a mess? It does. It doesn't just create a mess on a whiteboard, it creates a mess in a relationship, because you're trying to get something from that person that oftentimes they themselves are trying to get from you. And so if neither of us have a thing, and we're expecting to get it in the other person, how is that ever going to work? Hey, I'm Sven, one of the co-founders and mentors in the Mentoring Men community, and I show men how to transform broken relationships into thriving relationships. And in this video, I want to talk to you about a subject or a topic I would call enmeshment. And enmeshment is really behind a significant amount of the struggle a man and his partner will experience about the midway point of a relationship. It could happen sooner, it could happen later. It will eventually happen in most long-term relationships like marriage. And so I want to draw it out on the board a little bit to explain what is enmeshment, what causes it, and how to begin fixing it. Because to begin fixing enmeshment, a process I would call differentiation, is really the beginning of healing of both parties individually and thus the relationship. So let's talk about enmeshment. On the board here I have a quadrant, and there's two axes, okay? The first one is you and your partner. The second one is internal, external, or inside, outside. When we think about our needs, and these would be needs like you might find on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we can generally bucket our needs into needs that we believe are met outside of us or inside of us. And so all of us have beliefs about how and where our needs are met. And most of us, perhaps all of us, are taught by society, by our parents and family, by education, by religious institutions, media, etc., different belief systems about how and where these needs are met. And so I want you to think about you and your partner. I'm going to do everything for the partner in red and everything for you in black. Okay, so let's talk about you. Most men that we speak to, this is a complex topic because most men are not literate about their needs. What do I mean by that? I mean, they really don't know what their deepest needs are. Instead, when you ask them, they tell you about strategies to meet those needs. They describe their feelings about why their needs aren't met, who should be meeting them, but they really don't describe, without a lot of coaxing, what the need is. Let's just use a stupid metaphor. Suppose my need is hydration, and I didn't say I need water. If I was like most men, I would say, if Sally would give me a drink, I'd be okay. All right, well, that's not a need. That's to confuse the strategy that I might use to meet a deeper need, the deeper need being hydration. And so it takes us a while in working with the man to help him understand the difference between his truest, deepest needs and what are his strategies for meeting those needs, or what I would call his analysis or his explanation of why those needs aren't met. And so this can be a cumbersome process. This is one of the great reasons to have a mentor, or in some cases maybe a therapist or coach or counselor, who can hold a mirror up and say, hey, you're not clear yet on what your need is. You're telling me about strategies and analysis, not needs. Your need is hydration. And so men especially can find this complicated, because men, at least in my age group and the last few hundred years, have really been conditioned to see that expressing need is weakness. And that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to critique any human being for having needs, as though it's somehow some sort of, elite status as a man or otherwise to have no needs. And so even if a person is being needy, especially in different man circles, people will just say, stop being needy. That's like telling a person to stop being thirsty, or stop being hungry, or stop needing to relieve yourself. It doesn't just go away because you tell the person to stop. No, it goes away by meeting the needs. The problem is not needs. The problem is how we think about where our needs exist and who meets them. And that's what I want to talk about, because this is what creates enmeshment. If I, for example, say, and lots of men will tell me this, I need my wife to give me more sex. Now, that's a classic example of confusing strategy with needs, because no man needs sex, no matter how much they think they do, because there's nothing that happens inside of a man that is magical with sex. It's things that happen in his thinking, and so he does experience outcomes, but he tends to believe that it's a need. No, it's a strategy to meet other needs. And you can prove this by helping him unpack what that strategy gives him, because those are his needs. So I'm not going to do that on this video. I'll do that in other videos. But a way to get there is to ask yourself, or a person, well, what would I get if I had that I don't have now? What would I get if my wife gave me more sex that I don't have now, aside from sex? Well, I have certain feelings, and that's another question you can ask. What would I feel differently if I had that thing? And that starts to reveal the kind of needs I'm talking about, which are intangible needs. I'm not talking about water, food, shelter, physical safety in this video. I'm talking about intangible needs. What do I mean by intangible? It means I couldn't put it in a beaker or on a scale and measure it. Nobody can see it transact. It's a need that we all would agree that we have, but we cannot explain where it comes from, where it's sourced, or see or measure it, okay? So we're talking about things like happiness, a sense of appreciation, sense of being valued, worthy, significant. So let's say I live in a relationship and I have a need of happiness, and I don't put it inside of me, I put it outside of me, and I believe it comes from my partner. So I'm going to put my happiness here. And I'm just going to write the word, but in the future I'm just going to put X's. Now my wife, let's say she sees happiness as coming from my behavior. Okay, so happiness for her is here. All right? Now you see, I'm getting my happiness from her, she's getting her happiness from me. Now, let's suppose I get a sense of appreciation if she sleeps with me. And so my strategy to receive appreciation is my wife's sexual attention. Okay, so I'm going to put appreciation here. Now I've got this going down to her. It's outside, it's not inside of me, it's inside of her. Okay? And so forth. What you end up having is this crisscrossing, right? You might source some things up here. She might source some things up here, but you might source some things here in circumstances which are not inside of you, but maybe a raise at work. Maybe that gives you financial peace. Your need is financial peace and security, but where you see that coming from, outside of you instead of inside of you. And so, same with her. Maybe she says, I want to feel useful. So, she doesn't know how to feel useful. And she gets that from the kids or friends. Maybe she wants to feel seen, which I would suggest is a strategy. What do you get when you feel seen? Oh, I get appreciated. There you go. Appreciation. See? So she's looking here, or maybe she's looking here. This crisscrossing is what I want you to see. That is enmeshment. Enmeshment is when you mix up all sorts of things that are your intangible needs, and you're getting them from inside of someone else, and they're getting theirs from you. Doesn't that create a mess? It does. It doesn't just create a mess on a whiteboard, it creates a mess in a relationship, because you're trying to get something from that person that oftentimes they themselves are trying to get from you. And so if neither of us have a thing and we're expecting to get it in the other person, how is that ever going to work? Okay, so that's in a nutshell how enmeshment forms. Enmeshment forms by placing your needs in the role and responsibility and care of someone else. We're taught to do this, so much so that there's probably going to be trolls in the video that tell me that's how we're supposed to be. You're supposed to meet my needs. I'm supposed to meet your needs. Again, I'm talking about intangible needs, and I would argue if other people need to meet your intangible needs, you are disempowered, or at best, a child. I'm going to say that again. If other people need to meet your intangible needs, you're disempowered, and at best, a child. Why do I say you're disempowered? Well, because you can't meet your own needs, and you're at the mercy of other people. This is why you have friction in your relationship, because the person who you're thinking should meet your needs is not doing so according to your definition. That's the source of hostility, resentment, contempt, anger, animosity, frustration, discouragement, and so forth. You have those emotions because you have no path to have your intangible needs met without a change outside of you. You happen to also be looking in marriage to have a change occur in the person who wants the exact same thing from you. They want a change in you so they can change their internal experience. I hope you can see the bankruptcy in that thinking. It is absolutely relationship bankruptcy. Furthermore, it even includes a ledger, and that's the ledger that each of you carry around, where you're writing in your ledger what the person ought to be doing, should be doing, and how they're failing. And it's a system of debts and credits. It's transactional love, and it's no love at all. And it will absolutely leave you in bankruptcy, both personally and relationally. Now let's talk about how to fix it. When you're in this mess, you have a mess. You have personal and relationship bankruptcy. And like you have to in financial bankruptcy, you have to sort this stuff out, okay? The way we do this at Mentoring Men is we help a man understand all these things he has over here. And we help him move it back here. So he moves happiness back into his insides. He takes the power back for where he distributed that, and he starts owning it. He takes his need for appreciation and he starts to learn how to self-source that. Same with value and worth and so forth. What that does is that starts to wipe out all of these tendrils that were existing down there. And it removes pressure from his partner because she has felt hella pressure for having to manage that stuff for him. No partner wants to feel the weight of being responsible for the internal well-being, wholeness, sense of value, worth, and adequacy, all that. Nobody wants to be on the hook for someone else for that. Not as an adult, right? It's repulsive to women, and it will absolutely ruin your intimacy. And so now, notice we got this man, and he's cleaning up his insides because what he had was a lot of self-limiting beliefs that were preventing him from owning this stuff. That's why he gave it away. That's why he put it in his partner's control. That's why he saw it in a circumstance. We have to get him to change all that stuff. And we do. We're very good at that at Mentoring Men. We have a very rational, clear, understandable process for that. So much so that even mental health professionals have told us, wow, this has done for me what I haven't been able to accomplish myself in my own practice, let alone I've also not, I've experienced greater growth here than in therapy, counseling, etc. That's a common thing we hear from members in our community because it's easy to understand for men. It's not woo-woo. It's clear, rational. There's a process, and because it's all delivered in a context that's not clinical, where people don't tell you about themselves and don't share their lives, but is loving, supportive, and coming from men who know exactly what this is like and are quite willing to share their experience with one another. So that's stage one. Notice, partner still has this. This is a difficult stage, but it's also a necessary stage because a partner at this point is feeling for a little while a little uneasy. And if you're watching this and your partner's working with us, you might know what I'm talking about. You might be worried that they feel less dependent because you're used to transactionality in which you only receive love to the degree that you're transacting. And we're teaching a man to stop sourcing his regard from self and for you in transactions, which means if you have been deriving your sense of security from being useful to your husband or partner by managing his insides, he's going to no longer need for you to do that. And the relinquishing of that need can feel a little scary to the partner who was holding that need. She didn't want it, but at the same time, there is a certain sense of security in being needed and useful. And when that goes away, a lot of women fear that man is going to level up and leave the relationship. I just want to assure you, if you're thinking that, we've never seen a man level up and leave that relationship because it's not really what he wants, but he also realizes that his relationship is not the source of his bliss nor his pain. And when you realize that, you stop blaming people in relationships, and there's very little reason to leave, unless you're really doing some awful stuff. So for a while, the woman here could feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. And she's still going to live in a little bit of enmeshment, which means even though you've let go of sourcing your stuff in her, she's not yet let this go. And so this is a partial enmeshment. This whole process is called differentiating. And what's happening is you're learning what's me, what's you, who's responsible for that, and you're learning to start owning yourself, to start owning your emotions, your needs, how you go about meeting those needs. And it can be an uncomfortable time. However, it is the path to personal freedom and liberty, and really to a new phase of a marriage relationship or long-term relationship in which you have mutual acceptance, fondness, and a new kind of regard, not based on transaction, but on who the giver likes to be. And so what we explain to men is if you live this way for a little while, slowly, as your partner realizes that she's still safe, even though she's not holding on to your power, she will kind of naturally, without you bugging her or judging her or whatever, as you release judgment, she'll start to take her own power back slowly. And that starts to create goodwill in the relationship and also maturity in both of you. And now she's feeling better and whole and safe. Ladies watching, partners watching, this is emotional safety. Emotional safety comes from knowing who you are and liking who that is, and being with a man who does likewise, because you're free to be you without it triggering him into a storm of scary emotions. And so what we actually do in this process is we teach men to be emotionally safe, not so they can be emotionally safe for you, that's a byproduct, but they can be emotionally safe for themselves, because you know what makes us feel a lack of emotional safety is insecurity. You know what causes insecurity? It's having your needs outside of you where they're beyond your control. That makes us fear. What if the person stops meeting my needs? What if they won't give me what I need? What if they take something away? That's where fear and anxiety come from. And so when we take back our intangible needs and we put them back inside where they always belong. You were born with acceptance. You were born happy. You were born with value and worth. And in your insecurity, you started to ask other people to hold those. And so this is a personal process of healing and restoration inside of each person, and it results in good things. Now look, no more enmeshment. This is differentiated. This is a happy couple. Now you might say, well, why would they stay together now? Because we're so conditioned to believe that people need to be together solely based on transactional, needs-based relationships. Those are no fun. That's probably what you're in now. First half of marriage is like that. Oftentimes that's how the entire marriage is, if you don't learn this. But when you let that go, now you truly have a deep kind of love I would call unconditional high regard, or the Greeks called agape, which is the love a man is giving to his partner is not sourced in the behavior of the partner, which means even if there's a storm over here, you wake up, she's in a bad mood, she's not being the nicest she's ever been, this guy's going to keep loving. He's not going to do it without boundaries, but his disposition, his regard towards his partner will stand firm because it's not rooted in her behavior. It's rooted in who he loves to be and the value, worth, and significance he believes his partner has despite her behavior. And same thing. A woman also is able to give this back. This is beautiful when this happens. This is unconditional, mutual unconditional, high regard for each other. It is the path to experiencing a very deep, very rich, very connecting, very intimate, and very passionate marriage. And it begins first by differentiating. That is a painful process. We take guys through this all the time, and yet we also know when you go through it, it has major, major consequences for the better. And so I hope I've whet your appetite a little bit about this. This is complex stuff, and I don't expect one YouTube video to sort that out for you, but I hope it's given you a little bit of a John Madden Monday Night Football kind of diagram that you could start to see there is a way to get out of the disillusionment stage. We know this process, we know the trail, we take men around the world through this trail all the time. And so don't expect the video to fix it, that's not the point. The video is just to get your wheels turning and to encourage you to look deeper. And so if the things I've said in this video have struck a chord for you, if they're appealing to you, I want you to look in the video description for a way to get in touch. We have a community, a worldwide community of men who are dedicated to having these kind of experiences with themselves, who after they learn how to show other men likewise, and we would love to get you integrated into that community and on your journey to bringing everything back home. And with that, I'll ask you one more thing. if you found this video helpful, if you would subscribe, ding the bell, all that stuff, leave a comment. That helps us get our content in front of a massive amount of useless videos on YouTube. And we would love it if people in need could see what we do and hear the hope and opportunity that is before them. And with that, I'll let you go. Take care.